How's it going, everybody? Welcome to our official Session Zero for our new campaign, Tales of Aneria.
Woo!
So in case you don't know us, some quick introductions. My name is Colby, and I've been running the D&D Optimized YouTube channel for almost 9 months now. And with me are all of my friends that I play D&D with. So we've got Mr. Rogers, we've got Corey, we've got Tori, we've got Preston, that way, and Scott. And yeah, we're super excited to announce kind of what we're doing with you guys, talk a little bit about what you typically talk about in a Session Zero, but also introduce the world of Aneria, who Corey, that's going to be our dungeon master running the game for us here in Tales of Aneria, has been creating and working hard on for several weeks now, even months.
Aneria
maybe?
is my carrier. Oh yes, months and months.
So
actually, the initial concept of this world spawned out of before we were even recording sessions when we were playing the Curse of Strahd. The idea of it came to me then, and then I've had a whole year and a half to ruminate on it up until I started actually doing the work.
Okay, cool. Well, so yeah, I mean, the first thing that I really wanted to do is, Corey, if you would maybe tell us, we know a little bit, those of us who will be playing, but us and then also the viewers, a little bit about this world, so that when we jump into, episode 1, we'll have a little bit of a feel for this world that you've created.
Sure. So Aneria is a world of rolling hills, manicured forests. Everything is very pleasant. The winters are extremely mild compared to other worlds. There are very few lands that are pretty harsh. There's a couple that are semi-harsh that people don't really live in, but for the most part, the conditions are actually very pleasant.
What's real estate pricing like if I were speculating for like a second home?
Like about $10,000 to $12,000. No, like I already with these questions that I haven't answered yet. Yeah, like in gold level. At least 20 marks. Basically, the big way that Aneria is what makes it calm and what makes it a little bit more easy, more livable, are the 3 gigantic rivers that run through the entire continent and kind of bisect one another, become one. You've got the Gaius River, which runs from the northern tip of the land all the way down to about the central point. You've got the Aurelius River, which picks up after the central lake and runs all the way to the south. And then you've got the River Tremecules, which runs east to west across the entire continent. The only real reason why the Aurelius and Gaius are split up is just because there were 3 explorers that discovered the land rather than 2. Because technically the Gaius River and the Aurelius River are one big river. Yeah, like you could easily argue that, but
it's like one of
everybody's come to know them.
Halfway down it, you see the sign, now it's suddenly a different name.
Yeah, and it's just split off a little bit to the east, so they just named it a different river.
Yeah.
And then from there, any sort of river that branches off from those is usually given a name that evokes the river that it spawned from. So like the Guy Fontaine or the Trivoke River, these different rivers that kind of feed the land from there.
Okay.
As far as the world goes, common history only puts it at about 1,300 years old. There isn't too much of there's not a lot of like ancient empire ruins that are scattered around. You'll find a ruin occasionally, or some long forgotten hovel that has some magic items in it, or monsters, or both. But as far as real kingdoms go, there are very few of those. Most of them have spawned from a central location and into their own little individual kingdoms and such.
So do we know, and sorry, I might just interject questions, and
yeah, that's fine.
Maybe other people feel free to.
Yeah, please.
I mean, when these explorers discovered the continent, was it inhabited already? And so the people who live there just don't have like a very good like written history, essentially, or even oral history for that matter, of kind of their past and where they came from and things like that, or like did the people who populate the continent like sort of
migrate here
or migrate, or is that something that we'll find out later?
So it's a little bit combination of something you may find out about later.
Okay.
As you play. I would say as far as history is concerned, a lot of the main populations, a lot of the intelligence populations did migrate from the rivers.
Okay.
From, you know, they came down the Gaius, or they came down the Tremecules, or up the Aurelius. Actually, I want to point that out. I said that the Aurelius runs south to north, or north to south, but it actually runs from the south up to the north, so they all converge on the central point, basically, except for Tremecules, which continues east to west. Anyway, there were a couple tribes of other creatures that were already here, but weren't exactly intelligent quite yet, and the kind of appearance of people in these areas created intelligence in those other races. And it's all very vague. History of those early days, like everybody agrees that there were the 3 explorers that discovered this world, but nobody really knows where they came from. Nobody, because there's not really anything to do about, like, if you go travel down the river and come out the other side, you come out on the other side of the river. So it's like it's this weird that thing that nobody really ever talks about. And as players, you guys will start noticing it a little bit more because you're going to be more aware of the world, but most people just kind of think about how weird that is for a moment and then move on.
Just a generally accepted fact.
Yep. Yeah. The 3 explorers came in and they found it, and then towns and people started springing up and creating kingdoms and everything. So
interesting.
That's not to say there aren't ruins that might have weird things in them, but most of what you'll find is most of those ruins, in fact, are closely monitored by a group known as the Arcanum Infinitum. And they are kind of the big force of law mages, police, magical police kind of thing that kind of monitor the world for big threats and kind of protect each of the towns. Most towns have their own personal guard that has like a smaller capacity, or no guard at all, and they just rely on the Arcanum to provide their security. So the Arcanum, which is headquartered out of the middle of the world where all of the rivers converge at the place known as the Beacon, is sort of this shining tower of everything great about the world, and that's where all of the different forces of the Arcanum come from, whether it be by boat, by land, or notably by airship. There are plenty of airships in Aneria as well.
Okay, so
would you say that the Arcanum Infinitum, is that what you said?
Yeah, the Arcanum Infinitum. You can just call them the Arcanum. That's the generally accepted term.
Are they involved in government at all, or just more of kind of patrol and keeping peace? Yeah, keeping peace.
They are more about peacekeeping than getting involved in any sort of government politics. They never participated in any sort of conflict or war. Usually their domain happens to deal with extra planar threats and extra the only unacceptable forms of magic. Like necromancy isn't exactly a shunned form of magic in an area, but certain types such as planar magic or void magic, time magic, chronomancy is widely considered to be within their purview of, we do not want this around. And their methods, their reasoning for that is a little vague, but everybody just again kind of accepts that as, well, just don't do time magic and you'll be okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, but magic is fairly prevalent. It sounds like airships, lots of magic. The sort of acting peacekeeping force, sort of very interested in policing and controlling, not just I guess banditry, but approving and disapproving of certain types of magic. Correct.
Yeah, and the Arcanum has their own specific laws that if you break them in front of an Arcanum officer, they will bring you in for it. But it's never anything like petty thievery. If they're the town they're working for says that petty thievery is bad, they'll bring you in and try you with the local magistrate. But if you start doing something that the Arcanum itself disapproves of, then you'll end up in the Beacon, and you'll end up.
How do they feel
before a
about
tribunal.
murder hoboism?
Like every good organization, they do not like murder hoboism.
Oh, come on.
Sorry.
But the local towns
Depends on who you're murder hoboing, right?
So there are a couple towns that you could probably get away with murder in, so long as you stay away from the Arcanum. Notably, a town such as Falcon Crest or a town such as Pilfer are notable exceptions to this rule because they refuse Arcanum help on the regular. They drive them out if they come in. It hasn't gotten to the point where the Arcanum has felt they need to push that forward, but it's also at the point where the Arcanum is like, we know that there's bad stuff going on there, and so we need to send something stealthier in order to handle that.
So they're sort of the Wild West of Aneria, as it were.
Yeah, a little bit of Wild West. There's a lot of port towns because everybody likes to live alongside the Great River. It's kind of like a Tortuga, kind of like that. It's kind of like those areas where it's a little bit lawless, but it's controlled by people who, while they may be lawless, at least they're lawless for the right reasons.
They have a code.
Yeah.
Right.
More like
going
guidelines, but
yeah, exactly. Going back to your point about magic, though, magic items and magic in general is very prevalent. It's not like wizards are uncommon. In fact, anybody can learn a couple cantrips if they really try. Basically, a lot of people who end up being farmers or end up being craftsmen may end up, to use the game term, pick up the magic initiate feat just to kind of help them along by grabbing like a mage hand.
Everybody has prestidigitation and
something like that. Exactly. Yeah,
Clean the
prestidigitation is a perfect way for most common people to get away with. It's clean. It's clean. It's clean.
Very heavy magic.
Yeah. As far as that goes, there's also a big prevalent magic item distribution throughout the world. You can pretty much find most common and some uncommon magic items in any sort of major town, or at least town. Any village might have a little bit of a hard time finding certain items, but like something like a cap of water breathing is actually pretty readily available. And a lot of that comes from a organization called the Wellspring Item Co. Sorry. The Wellspring Item Co. is very much they distribute magic items throughout the lands as kind of almost an Amazon-esque, Walmart-esque organization where you know that you're going to get the best deals there, but you might get
free
more
shipping.
Yeah, exactly, and free shipping. But you might get a more personal touch if you go
2-minute shipping. They can just port it right to your house.
Mm-hmm. However, there are groups of people who shun magic, and I think they're called Massifists, if I remember correctly. Tori, was that the name of it?
Yep.
Yeah, Massifists are groups of people who believe that magic is destroying the world. It is literally everything that's wrong in the world, so they shun it in all forms, and they try to seclude themselves away, sort of like an Amish.
Yeah, I was going to say they're the Amish of Aneria.
Yeah. But instead of technology, it's magic. So, what is technology if not magic that other people don't understand?
So yeah, I mean, speaking of technology, I'm curious to know how prevalent, or maybe sort of what is the state of technology in the world as far as, I mean, are we talking, is it like steampunky? Is there a lot of like gadgetry and
Artifice.
Yeah, artifice. Thank you.
Yeah. So there is a lot of artifice in my world. If anybody knows me, which you all do, you know that I love me some good steampunky, some good like ancient tech kind of thing. So that's why we've got airships. A lot of it is magically based. So you'll get somebody with what's essentially a gun, but it's really just a scorching ray gem inside of a thing to fire it. It's not prevalent enough that everybody has a scorching ray gun or can get one, but there are plenty of artificers, and artifice is pretty prevalent. I think in one of the towns, in one of the descriptions that I've already written, I describe kind of this lattice work of gears and cogs above the town square, whirly clamps and whatnot that help transport goods back and forth, kind of thing. But I wouldn't say it's like, I wouldn't say that there's any sort of like technological boom. Everybody still uses crossbows.
No gunpowder. There's no.
There might be a little bit of gunpowder that somebody like pays a lot of money for, but I haven't like. There's no real prevalent civilization that uses gunpowder.
And most of this stuff, is this all recent stuff, or is it stuff that all recent? I mean,
everything's recent
adaptation, but yeah, everything's recent. But like, is it something that they just had technology, or was a building up to civilization, or is that something we'll find out?
That's something you'll have to find out. A lot of it, again, a lot of it when it comes to history, Aneria is very vague on. Like, how do we get from point A to point B? And somebody goes, we just did. And then we move on, you know, like kind of thing. I would say that as far as artifice goes, there has been a ramping up in recent years. Probably in the last 100 years or so, you've seen a little bit more of a bump up in airship quality, in different sort of artifice. There's been a lot more. I think around 200 years ago, the Meadstead Mead Company started deploying their beer golems across the world, which are just barrels of alcohol with robotic limbs that kind of move and float from place to place to deliver their goods. Kind of
I don't even drink beer, but that sounds like the most delicious golem ever.
Right. And then I'd say about 150 years ago, in Last Stop, one of the towns, you had the forming of the Free Wind Scrappers, which is a group of mercenaries that specifically have personalized aircraft, ornithopters, airships, you know, kind of these magical fighters that can help you from your journey from one place to another.
So what other like major organizations are there? My impression is that there's not really countries like we think of them. Maybe a couple of city-state like places, but yeah, tell us about the sort of any other major organizations and or like I guess political,
sure,
you know, conglomerations.
So going kind of from the eastern side of the map here, and you may be seeing that, or you may have seen it already. Maybe we'll put it back up.
I'll put it up a couple of times throughout.
And we will have a link down in the description where you can explore an area too. But moving from the eastern side of the map, we've got Manaport, which is a city that was collected around, basically the Wellspring Item Company created their company here, and people just started living here, and eventually it became a city that's run by a council of mages. They kind of have a small city state that kind of floats in the sky. You've got the biggest city of them all, or the biggest I guess kingdom of them all is what you would call it at this point, is Terabon. And they're ruled by 11 different house families, kind of that came together. They conquered both sides of the Tremecules and kind of create this gigantic city, the biggest city that you'll find in all of Aneria. And then they control everything, probably down south the eastern, down south the Long Road, through Bell's Watch and Willow Creek Hollow, I think, is the other major town along that road. And then once you get to Six Hills, it's pretty much just individual like town that run themselves based on like a mayor or a bailion, or you know, something, a burgermeister, you know, something like that. Okay. So a lot of like the verdant farmlands, Six Hills, Salsport, they're all run by individual people. You've got a small underwater city called I'm gonna get this. Edequathanathan is what it's called, and that's home to one of the custom species called the Edequathan that are basically they're shark people, I guess is the easiest way to describe them. The males look very much like a great white or a bull shark, and the females are much sleeker, like a nurse shark, or a tiger shark. Not that there's anything wrong with being a nurse shark. It's a respectable career and better than a doctor shark. So moving across the Aurelius River, though, you've got the Pouncewind Prairie, which doesn't have any sort of formal structure, but there are dozens, if not hundreds, of tribes of wasteland elves, centaurs, leonin, tabaxi, orcs, goblins, anything that you can imagine lives in the Pounceman Prairies, and they kind of just all live a nomadic lifestyle. And then they all trade at a small mesa called Littleton that is near our next location. And one thing that I want to stop and note here is just because goblins and orcs and centaurs and all of those live here, it does not mean that they don't also live in the civilized areas. That's one thing that I wanted Aneria to be very specific on is any race can live anywhere. There never has really been a sort of prejudice against any races. Sure, there's stereotyping that happens like in everything, but one of the main families in the town of Six Hills is a goblin clan, and they basically run an entire town on their own. So it's one of those things where just because I say that there's tribes of orcs, there could also be a tribe of humans that live in the Pounceman Prairie. And it just isn't one of those things where it's because they've been relegated to these monstrous roles.
Tribe of Kenku, who are like the Jawas.
Yep, exactly. A little bit of a tribe of Kenku. I actually just created a family of Kenku that specifically raise bounders, which are these giant rabbit creatures. And they live in Six Hills as well. I've done a lot in Six Hills, in case you'll hear me talk about that a lot, just because that is where we're going to start our campaign. Spoilers. And anyways, after Littleton, there's a small forest. Well, I would say small, but it's not really small. It's growing larger every day, but it's not big enough to yet show on the map. But it is a collection of everything Fae. The elves rule there with different animal spirits and different nymphs, pixies, everything like that. They all kind of form a grand council together. And then you've got the Malagoth Mountains, which is home to a lot of your mountainous tribes, and is a home to Malagoth City, which is the main home of the dwarves. And I think there's also giants that live there, and ogres and such as well. They kind of all have an alliance throughout the mountains. So, yeah. And then kind of moving north, we've got the Shifting Dunes, which is a kind of your most deserty area. A lot of the ruins that you'd find are going to be here. At least a lot of the ruins that aren't already claimed by the Arcanum. And then you've got Big Town, which is sort of it's a tent city, but it is a city in its own right. And it's sort of the place that you go if you need something, anything, and they'll have it there for you. Beyond that, you've got the Ungolin marshlands, which is probably where you'll find most of your inhospitable tribes. Your hags will end up being there. There's evil tribes of pretty much every race imaginable that all kind of have this weird hierarchy that nobody understands, but they all kind of serve a singular entity. And then the other major city on the map, besides some smaller towns like Terrisburg and Falcon Crest, is Archdom. And Archdom is sort of a marvel of engineering that was created by engineers from Malagoth that left to kind of make a giant bridge over one of the rivers. That was the original goal, and they ended up just reinforcing it and building a full city on top of it, and created their own society there.
Nice.
Awesome.
So, how, like, as far as the scope of this continent, because I'm looking at the map here, like, what would you say, the length of the Tremecules might be if you had to ballpark it from, in kilometers, for our international viewers?
I would say, let's see. This is a question that I've been debating on for a while.
Maybe in days of travel.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that intentionally vague to save myself a headache later, trying to figure out how long something's going to be travel-wise, or having somebody in the comments say, well, they should have been able to get there. Yeah, like everything is by plot. I would say that Aneria is not a big world, though.
Okay. I guess maybe the main reason why I ask is because when I look at, for example, Terrebonne, right, it's obviously like a big city, but I'm guessing it doesn't actually take up like a tenth of the continent or whatever.
Yeah, no, it is definitely not to scale. That's to show just how large the city is. I would say that
someone in Terrebonne drew that map, and they wanted Terrebonne to be like,
of course,
ours is the biggest, best city ever.
Yeah.
The individual great rivers themselves probably span a width that would almost qualify them as oceans. So you might set sail from one side of the river and take a couple of days to get to the other side, if you're just going straight across. And they're deep enough that there are giants that cannot cross them without a boat. I think in fact every single giant as it's listed in the monster manual cannot cross the river and end up on the other side.
Wait, let me make sure I understood that. So you're saying, like, if I went from one bank of the river Tremecules to the other bank, it would take a couple of days by boat?
It could take a couple of days.
Not going from like the east end of the river to the west end.
Correct. Yeah.
That's much bigger than I thought.
That is why they are called the Great Rivers, and they may have been just oceans in their own right, if not for the fact that, like, as far as it goes, like, you could technically, a day into that journey, already see the other side of it, kind of thing. So there are ways to be not lost at sea, but there are ways to be kind of out at sea with no land around, if you wanted to be, international waters and all that.
Right.
So I guess the other question is
that makes Archdom a much more impressive feat of engineering in my mind now.
It is not a wide city, but it is a long city. So, and they did build it on one of the smaller parts just because, but it is one of those cities that they definitely built it as a how far can we go, kind of thing. And that is, if you're looking for a Tinker Town, you're going to find it in Archdom. That is where a good congregation of Tinkers live.
So my question is then, with all these different like city-states and kingdoms and villages, obviously there's got to be some sort of tensions between some of these, right? Like, are there any wars or just
Interestingly enough, the people get along a little well. There have been conflicts, notably Terrebonne itself has a lot of internal conflict between the great houses. That sometimes spills over into the streets. They also had the biggest war between any sort of major faction was between Archdom and their the city on the other bank that lasted for
Terrebonne.
Terrebonne. I mean Terrebonne. Yeah, Terrebonne. The Terrebonne Herodale War lasted for about 4 years. As far as conflicts go, you'll get a little bit of pushback, specifically Falcon Crest and Terrisburg each hate each other. That's more of like a football rivalry than anything else. They both just think the other is complete ridiculousness. And Terrebonne notably has a specific view of what they see as uncivilized cultures, in such as the Pounceman Prairie and everything. There's a lot of tension there. Beyond that, most of the conflict that you will see in Aneria, at least at the start here, is going to be between something like the Emerald Wilds, which is a huge jungle that nearly surrounds Terrebonne, and Terrebonne itself. And you'll see that they're pretty much at the center of a lot of the different conflicts. They like to poke and prod the beast, as it were.
Gotcha.
So, anything else you want to tell us about the world before we jump into kind of figuring out where we are when the scene opens and who we are, for that matter?
Sure. I would say that Aneria is a land of mystery. Obviously, I've had to be a little bit vague here, and if you've been listening, you've been noticing there's a lot beneath the surface that may not click properly with your own cognitive abilities. There may be some different things that are going on. Notably, another conflict that we can actually discuss is the appearance of void rifts in the past 500 years. And void rifts are very much a tear in reality that spills something through. And notably, not only has it been things like an undead spilling out, or some sort of beast from an aberration plane or something like that, a beholder coming through or something. The hordes of the monstrous, which everybody may recognize, has also been using these void rifts to kind of sneak into an area and enact different various plots.
So not like a full-scale invasion from Ogma or anything.
Yeah. Yep. Interestingly enough, no. You would think that Ogma would have already launched an invasion, but it seems like either the Arcanum's quick response to these void rifts that open up, because they do respond to any tears in reality that they can sense, or some other factor is going into the fact that Aneria hasn't seen a proper invasion from foreign force.
And for those who don't know, sorry, Ogma and this horde was introduced in our 10K gauntlet, right? Corey, hold up your finger.
Bing! Right there, right there. And for everybody who thought that was just a joke, I never joke about my characters that I create. Ogma is all powerful and all knowing, and you may see him again. And then the other major event that has happened is probably happened, I think it was 3 years ago, if my own timeline in my head is correct, that suddenly in the western sky of an area, purple cracks began to appear. And it happened, there was this low rumble, the sound that everybody heard throughout an area, and then the skyline was cracked, essentially, with tendrils of purple magic that seemed to be riding up, almost as if they were trying to grab the sun. But at the same time, they stopped, and it's just created a spur of, what is this going on right now? The Arcanum has put a definite team on it, and most other magical societies are turning their attention towards that crack.
The cracking. You said that was 3 years ago?
Like
yeah, 1297.
Okay. But it's
specifically, or what would be equivalent to about a September or October of our timeline.
Okay, but it's not growing, and nothing bad seems to be coming out of it as far as the common people can tell.
Yep, nobody knows really what happened, but it hasn't nothing's been spilling out of Malagoth or anything like that. There's just been sort of this crack in the sky, and nobody knows what it is.
Well, cool.
Exciting.
Super interesting and super exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, and again, if there's questions that you have that I haven't been able to answer, such as the scale thing, it's just because I've been thinking about it, and it's easier for me to leave it vague until the last possible moment. Because me saying something like, oh yeah, it takes a day or two to get from one bank to the other, and then you being like, oh yeah, Archdom is pretty long, then it made me go, I guess Archdom would have to be really long. And these are things that I am not a planetologist. I don't know length nearly as well. So you may see some inconsistencies, but that's just because I'm not a professional. Get off my back.
Retcons will be numerous.
Yep. Yes, retcons will be numerous.
And expected.
Mm-hmm.
as in every D&D game.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, okay. Well, why don't you lead us through our session 0 then?
Sure.
I mean, what else
absolutely.
do we need to talk about?
So I think the next thing that we probably want to talk about is you guys. I described my character, which is the entire world, but I want to hear about each of your individual characters, and I want everybody to get formally introduced to them. Colby, since it's your channel, I think it's only right that you start us off with who you're playing, and I wouldn't say you have to give too big of a description, a physical description, like kind of go into a few details if you have something cool you want to talk about. Same with backstory. There may be some things that you want to keep a secret or that we reveal later, but you can kind of give a vague idea of your backstory as well if you want. Just as much or as little as you want to do.
I'll keep it a little high level for now. So I am playing a half elf, half dwarf, or a dwelf, as they are commonly called.
Jocked.
How is that possible? Let's go into
because it's a custom lineage.
Oh, let's go into our first house rule here. Just to clear up, I have allowed custom lineage to basically adopt up to 2 ancestries to pull from for feet. The idea of feet
purposes, racial feats.
Yep. So you may see a couple custom lineage characters here. In fact, raise your hand if you're a custom lineage. Yep. You may see a couple of them here, and they may be taking feats that may seem like they shouldn't, but I'm allowing it because it's my game.
Yeah. So my dad was a dwarf, and my mom was an elf, and basically I come from Malagoth City. I won't talk too much about my history or heritage, but essentially I am a warlock. I'm going to be a hexblade, and before you give me any crap about this, I've actually never played a hexblade in game until our 10K.
For shame.
Oh wow.
For shame.
True.
And so
It's
I'm
true.
curious to actually explore one in a campaign setting. I will be multi-classing, of course, and the intent right now for the character is to base it fairly closely on one of my builds, of course, from the D&D optimized playlist, which is the Lockeden Bard. So trying to maybe focus a little bit on burst or nova damage, which again I've actually never done in a character in a campaign before. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Wait. Your paladin in Curse of Strahd was not a burst nova character?
No.
Oh no. I gotta go adjust some plans here.
Having smite doesn't necessarily make you a burst character, although it provides you some opportunity to do so. But this will be much worse. Sorry.
Is there anything that you want to talk about physical description wise for your character?
Yeah, so I guess I would say that she's got auburn hair, kind of shaved on one side after the fashion of the vanguard of the city watch from Malagoth City. And she is, I mean, basically, what you would expect from someone who's half elf, half dwarf, right? Shorter than most elves, stockier than most elves, but thinner and more agile than most dwarves, and a little taller. So, but facial features are more elven. So she'd almost look like a slightly shorter, slightly stockier elf, probably in a nutshell. With green eyes and olive skin and a spear and a shield.
What type of armor are you wearing to begin with?
At the beginning, I'm proficient in medium armor as a hexblade, so it's scale mail. Is that right? Scale mail, I believe.
And then, is there anything about your backstory that you do want to discuss?
Only that I was sort of, at the time that Ceradon was born, a war was raging between the elves and the dwarves, and she was sort of part of what instigated a brokered peace, I guess. And that's probably it. Her patron and kind of the story around why and how she's a warlock and things, I think I'll allow that to come out in game.
Perfect. Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you, Colby.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think next we're going to talk with everybody's friendly neighborhood, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, why don't you talk about your character for us?
All right. So I'm playing Ezra, and he is a custom lineage character. He is a half orc, half wood elf. So he's a quarter of something else. I'm not sure.
Breaking down barriers. Both.
So he basically looks like an elf. Minus he's got tusks and he's kind of got the orcish skin color, but for the most part he kind of looks just like a really beefy elf.
Okay. Notably, orcs are green in Aneria, by the way.
Yes. So he's greenish. He's got that green skin that kind of gives him away.
He's a belf.
He is a wizard. He's kind of from a broken home. Because orcs and elves, that's kind of a hard thing to have. So
even despite like a lack of racism on Aneria, there's definitely a lot of conflict between certain races, and elves in particular see themselves as a little bit haughtier than most. So they may be a little bit more purification line type.
What? No way.
French accents.
He's pretty tall. He's like 6'2", maybe. He's got that, that orc in him. As far as backstory, I think I want to kind of let most of this just come out in game. Okay. He's a little bit socially awkward, as most wizards are, or people who are just very studious. So he might not be very handy in a fight and might not be really good at talking his way out of anything.
So as a wizard, he's probably had a little bit of formal training. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I guess I'll reveal he studied at the Talazam Academy, which is like one of the universities that kind of feeds into the Arcanum. And he was kind of on a fast track program to become a law mage. But we'll see why he's not.
Yeah.
Find
And
out.
do you want to discuss anything about who he lived with when he was growing up, or do you want to leave all that for private times?
Yeah, so he lived with his dad for most of his life, and I guess we'll just kind of leave it there for right now. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
the rest will
completely
be
fine.
a smile. A
Yep.
support.
And notably, like, this is interesting as far as session 0 goes, because you guys are all starting out at level 1. A lot of your paths will be revealed soon, but not quite yet. Specifically, Ezra's path, and I think well, Colby's path is pretty clear, but like a few of you have sort of like vague ideas and ideas of where you want to go, but we're not quite there yet. So, but thank you, Mr. Rogers. Tori, our lovely dungeon mistress, are you ready to talk about your character?
Sure. So my character, her name is Evosia, but she goes by Eve, and she is a half elf. We're going paladin, and she is. I don't want to give away too much about her.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So give me a little bit of a physical description, then. Like, everybody's so secretive in this game.
So she's quite young, first of all, about 20 years old, I would say. She has beautiful, long, dark brown hair with like crystal blue eyes, and she is going to be really fun to play.
Cool. And as far as like a characterization goes forward, do you want to talk about anything about personality-wise that she might be, or do you want to leave that for session as well?
Yeah, I would say that people are definitely drawn to her. She does command attention, but in a very humble way.
Okay. Not like she's seeking out the attention, more like it's just the fact that, I guess, sort of Snow White, sort of Disney princess-esque, not to like belittle that or anything, but sort of one of those things where the character themselves is the draw, rather than them trying to be entertaining or trying to be political or anything like that.
She doesn't walk around being like, "I'm so humble. Look at me. Look at how humble I am."
Yeah, it's more about like she'll walk into a square and immediately 3 people will be like, "I want to go talk to that person. They look interesting."
Yes, and I think some of it has to do with her beauty. I think people are naturally drawn to her because of that. But also she just has sort of this innate confidence that people are drawn to, that they're like, that's a person that I want to know.
Okay. And then just for everybody else at home, going back to Mr. Rogers, how old is Ezra abouts?
I'd say he's probably early 20s.
Early 20s there. And then how old is Saradon?
She's 54, so still young by elf and even dwarf years.
So
with and sorry, maybe I should have mentioned her personality-wise. I'm probably going for someone a little pretty lighthearted, pretty curious, pretty whimsical, maybe a little pranksterish.
Okay,
that's my starting point. At least we'll see if I continue on that.
Now, if you had to give your character a human equivalent, just because people need to compare things to humans all the time,
Sure.
What age about?
Yeah,
is she a teenager?
No, I'd say like maybe similar to Tori, like 19, 20, 21,
okay,
thereabouts.
Okay,
as far as maturity level.
Yeah, and then Mr. Rogers, for Ezra, are there any personality traits that you want to kind of embody, or are you waiting until the end of the character?
Mostly he's just kind of like socially awkward, like I said. He's so just worried about studying and becoming the best wizard. So that's kind of, he maybe is a little standoffish, maybe even a little bit like condescending, but not because he's meaning to. He just doesn't understand like social cues and like social norms. Like he just doesn't quite pick up on that kind of stuff.
Perfect. All right. Let's go ahead and talk to my brother. Hey, Scott, how's it going?
Hi. Good. I am playing a Warforged. An Artificer is my class, and my character's name is Bolt. And Bolt has been wandering around Aneria for a good long while, decades at this point.
We said
Bolt's
about 80 years?
75, 80, yeah. They've gathered a whole bunch of information about the world. They're very inquisitive. They love information, facts, data, that kind of thing. So every time they go to a new town, they love to be like, "Where's the library?" I want to see the history of this town. I want to see, talk to some people that have been around a long time. And because they're so well traveled, they've made a lot of friends over the years. It's one of those like, I know a guy type of people, and especially in towns that they've already been. Bolt is about 7'6", 7'4", 7'6", pretty tall, pretty big. Obviously made of metal, because Warforged, and like 400 pounds, so big beefy boy, right? And yeah, just kind of mostly quiet most of the time. Doesn't talk a lot, but isn't shy or anything. Just more observant. I'm just going to observe what's going on here. Unless there's something fairly important to say or something they want to know for sure.
What color of metal? Like what's
So,
the alloy?
Yeah. So his I keep saying Warforged are just he's basically genderless. So not a he, not a she. The gender is metal.
Forgive us in advance for slipping up if we probably start using
that's
he,
fine. That's fine.
because it's you.
I'll do it too all the time. But their skin tone, or what would be the equivalent of skin tone, is kind of like a dull copper, right? Not copper's really shiny, and then when it gets kind of patinaed, it gets that it's not the green.
It hasn't gone green yet. But...
Yeah, it hasn't eroded or anything like that, corroded, but it gets like a patina where it's really dull and it's almost kind of splotchy. If that makes sense. I can show you guys pictures later, but copper looks really cool after it's been patinaed for a while. So, which kind of shows their age. They've been around the block a little bit. So, carries a shield.
I think when we're starting the adventure, you have a club too. Is that correct?
Shield and a trusty mace, actually.
Yeah. Perfect. And then that brings us to one more good point, but we'll get into that after we get to our last person. Is there anything else that you want to reveal about Bolt at this time? Is there a specific reason why he likes history or anything like that?
Bolt's always been drawn to it. Just kind of always wanted to know, what's happened in the areas or in the towns. Essentially, I guess I can tell a slight bit of the backstory. Bolt basically woke up in a scrap pile. Don't know how they got there. They don't know how, who put them there, or if they were just randomly assembled out of magic type of thing. So that's kind of one of the driving forces.
Somebody dumped a bucket of magic waste on the pile and like, hey, look at Warforged.
Yeah, exactly. Warforged, yeah. Secret of the Ooze.
Yep.
That's an area too. Secret of the Ooze,
yep.
Right?
It was going to be too fast to an area, but I guess.
Yeah. An area harder.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's one of the driving forces is kind of be like, kind of find out like what happened to them, how did they come to be, like what's going on, that kind of deal. So.
Cool. Yeah. Alrighty. And then last, but saved for a specific reason, so not least, Preston, why don't you go ahead and talk about your character?
Victor is his name. He is his mother and father. His mother was an air genasi. His father was a fire genasi. So it is a custom lineage. He
no half elf.
You're like steam
half
genasi.
genasi.
I'm just basically all genasi.
All genasi, yeah, just like a steamy boy.
So from a physical perspective, for anyone who's played Destiny, if you know who Aldrin Sov is, He has a very similar kind of pale blue complexion, kind of golden amber eyes that are very kind of stark, I guess, against that. He has kind of a darker, or not darker, but like a kind of a whitish grayish, not from age, but just the simple like kind of colors of the air genasi through his hair. He is, I think I have him written down as 6 feet. Let me look real quick. He is a male, so he identifies as he, him. He's 6 feet. He's about 210 pounds. He's 22 years old. And
youngins.
Yep.
So except for Bolt, like you guys are all like just barely adults.
Oh no! Oh, I'm the babysitter.
Yep.
Oh no!
So I was gonna have Bale, basically he is a member of one of the fourth ring. He is not of the first. I think he's of the first Gi of the 8 rings, which is essentially an organization that is a nomadic tribes.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of nomadic tribes around the world,
Yeah.
a bunch of different people.
They do have a kind of like a, not really a seat of power, but like a place that they tend to congregate in a large kind of amphitheater in the Malagath Mountains that you may or may not learn about. He's basically his whole ideal is that he is very. His parents were very dogmatic. He was grown up in what's called the Creed. And this creed, essentially, you can think of it as kind of like Mandalorians a little bit, where it's just very, very, what do you want to call that? There's a high bar of entry. And if
it's a very zealous people.
Yeah,
they adhere to tradition really hard and stuff.
Yeah,
like that,
they do
right?
everything. It's very Bushido.
Samurai-esque.
Yeah,
it's very samurai-esque for sure.
And so each of those, essentially, to without getting too deep into stuff, I want to again let that kind of flesh out. He starts out kind of a little bit. He has this eagerness to perform and to be, like to do well, and that sometimes gets his blind ambition kind of gets him a little further, kind of stops him. He is actually wearing a cursed mask, so to speak, that he is blind, and so he is not able to see, and through whatever else you'll find out. But he is
I think actually we need to do a little bit more discussion about what that means, because you are playing a rogue, and you are playing specifically a rogue that does ranged attacks. So instead of what we have is we have a and Preston and I have talked about this extensively, so we've kind of worked out the system here. But the blindfold actually gives you, was it blind sight or was it tremor sense?
It was blind sight because it's based on air, and it was the air genasi, but it's with 10 feet. It's very limited.
So he's got 10 feet of blind sight instead of his normal thing. So he will be taking disadvantage on certain attacks. Mm-hmm. He has certain other ways in order to kind of extend that range, including a little bit of like echolocation that we've discussed specifically for his character. And specifically, if you're okay with me getting into it right now, unless you had a little bit more that you wanted to talk about.
No, I mean, he has daggers with him. He's all about the blade and like making sure that he's very he's constantly like sharpening the blade, constantly polishing it, constantly checking on the gear. Mm-hmm. Not in like a neurotic way, but in just a very ceremonious, like every day it needs to happen. And his goal and his aim is he wants to learn the ways of fighting from other places. He's very inquisitive that way, but he's also, after issues that kind of led up to this blinding incident, has left him a little bit kind of
reserved,
unsure of himself.
Yeah. And I think, so specifically what I wanted to discuss is that we have created a custom subclass for you once you get to, I think rogues get it at level 3.
Mm-hmm. 3, yep.
Based on one of the professions of Aneria called the Knife Dancer. Yep. And these are basically people who have psionic connections with their blades and are able to wield them with thoughts and with magic. So we'll get into a little bit more about what that does when we get to that point. Maybe we'll even do like a a shorts episode or something where we talk about the knife dancer, because special thanks to Preston and Colby for helping me work on this class and try and balance it. But keep in mind that like everything else, I have the ability and I will retcon and tweak it as needed. There will be patches to an area if needed.
It's pretty cool. I reading it, I was kind of like, oh, I want to play a knife dancer.
And I think
That's Colby's fourth multi-class is going to be, I'm going to the knife dancer.
This community is probably going to be the best place to break that. So
I have no doubt that you guys will think it's too overpowered. As far as that goes, it's my game. I can make an overpowered homebrew. And if there's anybody that I would put that in the hands of, it would be Preston.
Yeah, you're going to say me.
No, well, no, definitely not.
Okay, Preston, you're going to have the sun sword. All right, what are you going to do with it? Well, instead of hitting him with it, I'm going to swing it around and make it dance.
Play music on it?
All right, cool. Preston, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
My guy's since he's kind of been kicked out, he's trying to make his way as a urban bounty hunter.
Otherwise... So he has been kicked out of the 8 Reigns. We did want to mention that as well.
Yeah, he's basically been, until you meet a certain criteria, don't bother coming back.
Yeah. And yes, a specific quest. And that actually brings us to the next point that we can talk about, which is where you guys are at, where you're going to start, and everything that kind of leads up to that first session. Yeah. So as far as Aneria goes, there are certain events that people always want to attend. You always want to go whenever a new king is crowned in Malagoth City, which doesn't happen that often. People from far and wide want to go there. Big Town always has something going on. Everybody should take a trip out to the Ruby Oasis at least once in their lives, but it's pretty pricey, so good luck. That's more of a rich person thing, I suppose, than anything else. You should always visit Manaport. Like, everybody should at least go to Manaport once. It's like New York, right? But I think
the Aneria bucket list.
Yeah, the Aneria bucket list. And I think one of the biggest things is everybody loves the Festival of Six Hills, which is where you guys are all going to be starting in about, I believe it's called Full. The month is Full, FOL. And it is a time of harvests. It's a time of festivals. And most importantly to Six Hills, it is the anniversary for their binding together of the different townships. Six Hills, which is essentially 5 different hills and a valley. The valley is the 6th hill. It's just upside down.
It's just upside down.
Yeah, makes sense.
Concave hill.
They each founded small settlements on these individual hills and kind of started a classic rivalry that turned into a full-out battle. And it was about 60 years ago. The battle lasted for about 2 hours, and it ended with a goblin named Balin, who had just lost his wife to this riot, essentially, calming people down and bringing people together in a truce and binding these 5 towns into one single city-state, federation, conglomerate, united state, if you will, of individual places called Six Hills. And they created the 6th town at that point, which is known as Balin's Birth. And now all trade basically goes, which was the main point, was trade disputes. They all go into Balin's Birth, and then Balin's Birth is the export-import town, basically. And on their first year anniversary, they created the festival at Six Hills in order to honor those lost in the battle and to honor their people finally getting over their individual issues and coming together. And for the next 60 years, this has been going on each year, and each year it's been bigger than the last. People come from all over an area. Usually the bulk of the people come from the southern or the southeastern portion, everywhere from Terrebonne to Salzport. Notably this year, spoiler alert, Edequa Thanathan has some people coming from it, some special guests and everything.
Some shark people.
Yep. So be on the lookout when we get to it. And there's a couple different events that go on. Each individual town either contributes to or creates their own individual contest of might or wit or just general speed. Most notably, the festival Bounder Bash. No, the Brew Bash, but the Bounder race. Like, there's this huge race season that culminates in this final sort of crown where these Bounders, again, gigantic rabbits that can hold medium-sized creatures or smaller. Usually the people who ride them the best are small creatures. But they have their finale here, where one person takes home what's called the Diamond Cup, and everybody comes to see it. It's almost like the Kentucky Derby, one of those wonderful things.
So do they ride them with like saddles, or do they sit inside their pouches? Do they have pouches like a kangaroo?
So they're rabbits, so no.
Not marsupials.
Not marsupials. But some do saddle. There are a couple that ride on more of a wild Bounder.
One guy that hangs underneath on the stomach. That's it. He doesn't win very often.
That's how he gets him to run faster.
He's definitely not in the final, that's for sure. But everybody loves him just the same. The Brew Bash competition gathers together the greatest distilleries in all of Six Hills and arguably the world. Everybody kind of agrees that if you want quantity, you go with Meadstead Mead. If you want quality, you go to Mead, or you go to the individual distilleries in Pale Bend, one of the 6 towns of Six Hills, and they will provide you with some of the best, most delectable delights. And they compete every year and give out free samples so that everybody can enjoy and kind of compete in this fun-spirited competition.
Are there beer golems?
There are a couple, notably every year there are a couple Meadstead Mead beer golems that are these giant kegs that wait around for people to come by. Mostly they go home nearly full. As far as Six Hills go, they are notorious. The people there are notorious for thinking that Meadstead is pretty much swill. Yes.
Got it.
You also have a good strength competition. That kind of comes from one of the, I'm trying to remember the town name. I know all the towns except for that one. Gordonvale. Basically, they create these giant boulders. I should say, the earth elemental that lives beneath Gordonvale and provides them with the bulk of their import-export of minerals, creates these boulders for people to break open and try and win in a strength competition. And then you've got Balin's Birth kind of runs the whole thing. The town of Bordergrad, which is a town of that's kind of militaristic, they put on a reenactment of the Battle of Six Hills and its conclusion because they're kind of the college town. The Millibrex College of Arts and Martial Arts kind of is in that area, so they kind of put on that performance every year. And then the town of Littlegale, which handles a lot of the plant growth and flowers and everything, they put on a kind of a relay race in which you drink different potions to try and be the best and get through obstacles. So that's more of so there's a lot going on, and it goes on within 2 days, or with just 2 days. So it's kind of this whirlwind of activity, and each of you, for individual reasons, has never been and wants to be there. Specifically, I think we are having Saradane and Eve will be arriving together as a sort of pseudo representative of the Arcanum, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we get into the game. I know that Bolt and Ezra were also planning on traveling together. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to talk to you, Scott, about that, and I don't know if you want to do it right now or you want to do it.
That's what session 0 is for.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So basically, for reasons, I'll probably chat you privately after, but for reasons, Ezra feels like he needs protection.
Okay.
And you look like the type of person who can offer protection.
Yeah, and you find out that Bolt's actually a pretty good guide as well.
Yeah, exactly.
He very much, they very much, as you're traveling, and if you look off to your right, you will see, a giant boulder.
I've been in this
I
area.
got that boulder 22 years ago.
It was much bigger back then.
So I would have hired you with what little gold I have at level 1 to kind of get me to the place where I can blend in the best, which would be a large crowd of lots of people.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And from Six Hills, once the festival is over, there is going to be caravans going every which way that you could probably meet up with and join and kind of.
We probably have like the contract that says like you'll get me to Six Hills, and then from there we'll kind of go our separate ways. But obviously, something's going to keep us together at some point.
Bolt's just happy for a traveling companion at this point, so he was like, "Yeah, hell yeah."
Awesome.
Nice.
Perfect.
And I could mention Corey, as far as my character goes, Ceridon, she as a sort of elite, I guess I would say, member of the vanguard of the City Watch of Malagoth. She was sort of given this assignment once the cracking happened, right? The king himself sort of gave her this quest essentially to head east and to find out what she could about what this cracking is, because it's like right over the mountains, so they're very sort of extra concerned, maybe more than most would be. And her patron as well actually has told her to head east to seek wisdom. Her what she needs will be found there. And so her initial thought, of course, was to head towards the Arcanum and to their seat,
The Beacon.
the beacon.
And it is three
towers,
three pearl spire, not pearl, marble spires that rise up from the middle of what is essentially a giant lake,
right?
where all of the rivers converge, and then atop it is a golden orb that always seems to be shining with light, but doesn't seem to block out any sort of like night sky or anything like that.
So over the course of many months, maybe even years, she made her way there, and upon arriving is actually where she met Eve. And we don't need to get into kind of the story of how they met and everything that happened there, but essentially by the end of their stay there, they were basically given this assignment to represent the Arcanum at the Brewfest.
Yep.
Brewbash, sorry.
The Brewbash, yep.
And so that's why they are arriving together.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as Victor goes, I think that is it random chance that has you there during the festival, or did you specifically pick this time?
I picked this time because I wanted to. I thought that on occasion there are some of the rings that will perform or trying to enter in contests or what have you, basically to show, not to like dominate and show prowess or anything, but it shows good faith for them outside of it's a way to get people to say, oh, look, wow, that's cool, I want to be a part of that. And so I'm thinking maybe
their version of like missionary work or whatever, right?
Yeah, like basically, or bringing someone in, or like the you have the military that like they're trying to recruit and that kind of stuff. And so my hope is that I might be able to find them or someone who might have something that I can learn, because I'm on this just trying to find something to better myself so that I can undo my screw ups.
Perfect.
Tori, sorry, Corey.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, Tori, did you want to add anything to like what you were doing there, or how we met, or anything like that, or is it all top secret?
No, I was there under the direction of my employer when we met, so that's why I was at the Beacon.
Okay.
That's all I'll say.
I'm so glad that you. I'm so glad that you shared your
Yeah.
backstory with me. I'm like, wow, nobody else gets to know all these things.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, that's true.
Well, that's because you know everything.
Yeah, I have to. If I'm going to plan a good session, I have to know everything. As far as that goes, is there anything else anybody wants to discuss about their characters' goals or their characters' ideals that they want to bring up before we begin kind of going through a few little other things such as home rules and just checking on other stuff?
I think I need to make it clear that I am a rogue that does not have a tragic backstory.
Okay. I mean, you're blind.
Yeah, there's tragedy there.
Not tragic. I've got both my parents alive.
Well, okay, that is unique.
Like, could be a lot worse.
Hopefully nobody can hear that.
That's actually more than I can say for myself. I only have one parent alive.
Okay. So then let's go ahead and talk really quick. I just want to make sure, are there any specific triggers or anything that we want to avoid as far as story beats go. Obviously, I'm not going to go too heavy-handed into X-rated stuff, R-rated stuff, that sort of thing. Anything romantic will probably be a you guys start kissing and it pans to the window or something like that. Just for your sanity and for mine.
Yeah. I guess I would just say, maybe we try to keep it PG-13 or whatever the equivalent of that is. You know what I mean?
That's good.
Just for the sake of audience and YouTube more than anything, maybe. I don't think we need to shy away from mature topics.
Okay.
There's plenty of great story content and things there, but just
tactical.
Okay. I would say one thing is, as far as my storytelling goes, if there's anything that comes up that you personally find offensive, either a player or an audience member, obviously know that I don't do any of this stuff to come from any sort of malicious place. Sometimes ignorance can be malicious, but I'm always trying to better myself. There's already been a couple things that I've run by Scott, and he goes, maybe we should change this to this just for PC's sake. And then it just goes, oh, that's something that I never realized before might be considered a slur or might be considered stereotyping in a negative context. I'll try and keep things light. Know that this is a fantasy world, and fantasy races oftentimes have defining traits to them that might develop their character. I will try and make everybody as well-rounded as possible, but sometimes orcs are barbaric. Sometimes elves are racist. Sometimes dwarves are a little greedy and they love gold, kind of thing. And that's not any connotation towards any race out there in the physical world. It's not any sort of comparison that I'm ever going to make, saying like, oh yeah, these people are really these people in real life and I don't like those people or anything. I'm 100% on board with any sort of community, any sort of like social justice stuff. I'm completely okay with. I myself am a member of the LGBT community, but I may screw something up. And if that's the case, if you mention it to me, I will do my best to correct that behavior. Okay. One more thing that I do want to ask: does anybody have any sort of phobias or aversion to anything, like body horror or like any sort of like phobia for specific creatures that they want me to shy away from?
Ceiling fans that are turned up all the way.
Okay, not a problem. There's no ceiling fans in my world.
Okay, we're good.
That was part of my backstory.
Not here.
I mean, when they start doing this, any moment, man, I'll cut your head right off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Game over.
You guys already know my weird aversion to
Toenails?
fingernails and toenails.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I'll try to
contact
refrain from
lenses.
like any sort of like
torture made out of them
no
or anything,
dwarven toenail.
So
Dallin,
is that
I mean,
Is
Mr.
that-
Rogers.
is that ever to the point where it will make you uncomfortable, like extremely uncomfortable to not want to play anymore? Or is it one of those things
will
that's
make
like,
me like gaggy, feel like I might throw up.
okay, all right,
Just
keep a
punch
bucket.
Corey since you sit next to him. If he starts getting too into it, just be like, pow.
Okay, I will try. I mean, I don't usually do a lot of body horror stuff, but sometimes I can get a little bit weird with characters and the way that like they look and like the way that demons and devils act. So if there's anything that happens, just kind of give me a little nudge and say, hey, I'm starting to feel a little queasy here.
Once he starts going,
enjoy this. Yeah, and then I'll go ahead and pull back on that just to make sure.
It's the clippings that gross me out.
Okay.
So I don't think that's gonna come up.
And the devil trims your nails or anything like that.
Today's
Yeah.
episode of things you didn't know about your dungeon mistress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think like one of the things that might be a trigger would be something like eye torture, or like I know we talked about beholders in our 10K getting stabbed right through the eye. Was that too much, or was that okay?
That's a little yuck.
Okay.
But I mean, I didn't barf or anything. So
Alrighty. I just want to make sure. I want to know where the line is so that I don't cross it.
thanks for accommodating my strange Aversions.
Well, that's what we're about.
That's fine. For the longest time, I couldn't do like anything broken bone dislocation
yeah.
stuff because
Yeah.
I've experienced all that. So every time it would happen, I would get queasy and be like, oh.
Yeah.
And I think
no.
I avoid describing those in detail for that reason.
I think
too.
Colby, Dallin, and myself are insensitive to that because Tori's game had plenty of that.
Yes.
See, it doesn't bother me anymore. It was years ago, and it was shortly after, some accidents and stuff. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Cool. All
I don't
right.
have anything. So
Perfect. House rules. Everybody good to move on to house rules?
Yes.
To end this? Okay, so house rules. The first house rule that I have is the first 3 levels are going to be milestone based rather than experience based. Just because I don't want to make you guys struggle too much. I have specific story beats in mind to get you up to level 3, and then from there we'll keep it to a more XP based system.
So if I kill everyone in the 5 hills, how much or the 6 hills? That's how much XP per civilian?
Level 3.
Hellstone.
That is a
That's not
boulder
milestone.
dropped on you from above, my friend. No.
The rift opens
No
and
murder hobos.
The Arcanum
Yeah.
surround you. And
The
take you
Arcanum
to
definitely would respond to something
Okay.
like that. I'm sure somebody trying to murder a whole town, that might invite an Arcanum response for sure. As far as other house rules go, natural 20s, natural 1s. A natural 1 is considered a failure, an automatic failure on ability checks and attack rolls. So ability checks,
regardless of your plus.
Yep,
to
regardless
that.
of plus. Yep. I reserve the right to do additional negatives based on a natural 1. I'm not going to say that every natural 1 is going to have you stabbing your friends or losing your weapon, but you may occasionally have something happen that on a case-by-case basis, I might see as cinematically appropriate. 20 on a damage roll or on an attack roll will equal maximum damage plus an additional die roll for the attack. And
maximum
that includes,
damage of the original dice.
Yes, and that includes spells. That includes if you throw a smite on there, a divine smite, you get
attack.
max damage, and then you get to roll it again. Yeah, sneak attack is another one. You definitely will be able to do some buko damage. I want to reward nat 20s, and I think it makes for a better system.
That includes for enemies, though, against us as well,
Yes,
right?
that does include enemies. Enemies will also be maxing that out, and enemies will also have consequences for natural 1s at times. I'm notorious for that, though, so that's not anything new for you guys.
Yeah.
And then a nat 20 on a skill check is a nat 20. A lot of people don't like doing nat 20s on skill checks. I love it. I think it's a great way to be like, oh yeah, the thing that you're absolutely trying to do, you let happen. So no matter how difficult a task, I'm going to regret saying this. No matter how difficult a task is, if you roll a
Kill
nat
everyone
20,
in the town.
Well, and
Twenty.
you don't have to allow the roll.
Yeah.
to begin
I mean,
with,
you
right?
could set a DC of like 45 for something,
And-
No, nat 20
But
Oh,
nat
I
20
see what you're saying.
succeeds.
Yeah, okay,
automatic
gotcha.
success. Even
Yeah.
even with that height. Yeah. So
And I
you know-
assume this is just tempered by what you're saying. So like I can't say, okay, I want to know the history before history, nat 20.
yeah, exactly.
No,
Yep. You can't just be like, I want to learn just from the ether about what happened before,
Through space
through space time kind of thing. There may be situations where something like that can happen, but those have to be propped up naturally in the story. You can't just
it does make for
jump
some
on an
epic
idea.
moments. We've
Yep.
had some pretty cool things happen in the past.
There has been
They
some
weren't
good
game-breaking
things
or
that
anything, yeah.
that I didn't expect to happen, and the players managed to pull off, and it made for memorable moments. So I'm completely allowing that. As far as other ones, we can talk about healing potions. This is the other big house rule that I have here. There are 2 actions that you can take with a healing potion. If you take a full action to drink a healing potion, as is the norm, you regain the maximum number of hit points for that healing potion. It's not a 2d4 roll. It's 8 plus 2, so 10. You regain 10 hit points from a regular.
You drink
healing potion.
every drop.
Yep, exactly. But you can also use a bonus action to just try and chug as much as you can in a quick second, and that is you roll for a healing potion as normal. And that is pulling out the potion and drinking it, by the way. There's no bonus action to pull out the potion, bonus action to drink it on your next round. It's the bonus action is you just have one at your belt that you just pull out, or one in your pouch readily available. Your adventurers, if you don't have health potions readily available, you're not being an adventurer properly, right? And then I'm also going to reserve the right to hand out what I call, this was originally going to be the luck system, but we had to modify it just because we felt it was a little too easy. But I reserve the right to hand out, ooh, I have them here, one of these lovely numbers, a D6, if I feel like you've done something to impress me, to make me laugh so much, or just done something super cool that I feel like deserves a little bonus beyond inspiration, because I know that people like to save their inspiration a lot. So being able to hand out like a D6 on your next roll.
Will you take them away if a pun is so terrible that it hurts?
Oh, you don't know Corey very well. His
Yes.
puns are the most painful of all. There's
It's
no
true.
threshold.
It's true. The punishment for that is punishment from me. So no, I won't take these away from you, but I may also award them to villains as sort of an extra thing that a particular big bad can do, just to be able to add a little bit more danger to the game.
What can we use those luck dice for? And can we hoard them infinitely, or is there a cap?
I would say that they are per session. So if you're using a luck die, or if you're not using a luck die, at the end of that night session, you'll wipe back down to 0, because they are just because there's specific bonuses for something cool that I thought of that night, or some funny joke you made. I'm not gonna let you track them and keep them. Okay. I would say within a session there is really no limit to how many that you can have, and as far as rolling, you can use them for anything. If you want to tell me that you want to get a D6 of movement speed, I will let you roll that D6 and get extra movement speed. If you want to tell me that you want to increase your armor class by that amount, I will let you roll the D6 to increase your armor class. These specific luck dice are how lucky you are. Yeah, just for that specific instance of an attack.
Hey, at the very beginning, I want to have a 37 AC.
Yeah, if you want to use them to give yourself a second wind and regain health, you can, and you can use them specifically as any sort of. I would say I would limit them 1 per roll, but you can use them in any situation that you want. There'll be just a little fun thing oh yeah, I really want to be able to cast this spell, but I don't know if I have enough spell slots for it. And it's well, let's see if you can meet the level of that spell with this dice, kind of thing, or give you a different bonus based on that.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's it. Does anybody else have any questions about home rules or any sort of home brew stuff that you want to talk about? Besides, obviously, we'll talk more about Preston's homebrew later once we get to that.
No, I don't think so.
I just
Not
want
here
to play.
anyway. Yeah, me too.
Yep, we've got about 2 days till our first session. It'll be about a week until you guys get to see that first session. In the meantime, I think if you want to catch me streaming, I stream on Saturdays. If you have any questions about Aneria that you want to bring up. One thing else I will note is you'll be able to see in the description below, there will be a link to the site that we are using, worldanvil.com. Thank you for allowing us to basically build a wiki for this world.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor, no, but personal thanks. Yeah. And if you want to see anything about Aneria, you can go there. There's the same map that you've been seeing kind of flash up as we've been talking about the world. There is a cool interactive version of it so that you can pick a specific town, city, kind of learn a little bit more about that. One thing to note is there may be stuff that's intentionally vague in there that may be fleshed out later, just because I tend to create the wide concepts of the world and then drill down into them when you guys get to those areas. So, for example, Terabon doesn't really have a specific motif that I've assigned to it yet for the buildings and everything. I'm leaning towards sort of a cool Japanese style, feudal Japan style for it. But I wanted to kind of leave that nebulous until we get there. So you may see things that just talk about, oh, Malagoth City is a dwarven city, and that's it. And then once you get to Malagoth City, then we can dive into it a little bit deeper and find out the specifics of it. And that will be ever expanding with the game as well. New articles will be released, new characters, new NPCs, new monsters. The adventures and their recaps will be also on the World Anvil page. So be sure to check back regularly if you want to follow along.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks Corey, thanks everybody. Really excited to jump into this world. We've been anticipating this for a long time.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, 2 more days for us. It's gonna be awesome. But anyway, thanks for watching. Do make sure you like and subscribe and comment, and follow us. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and can't wait to share the adventure with you all in a week. So stay tuned. Okay.
Bye.
See you later.
Hey guys.